My friends, wasn't the message sent from Washington to Brasília in the last few hours an administrative memorandum? It was a diplomatic earthquake whose shockwaves hit the nerve center of power in Brazil. The course of events reveals that a lie, no matter how well constructed, doesn't go far when it tries to cross the border of a superpower under a serious administration, in this case Donald Trump. What was seen at the State Department was a surgical response. Federal police officer Marcelo Ivo, the operative who moved in the shadows of a clandestine investigation on American soil, was kicked out of the United States. Expelled, sent away, humiliated, his visa was cancelled, the order to leave was immediate and the humiliation became public. Did everyone see it? I saw it. Did you see it? The course of this crisis confirms what strategic intelligence analysts had already pointed out. The American government would not tolerate meddling in its own backyard. Yes, meddling. Secret police, investigation, persecution of the opposition. The actions of this officer, acting as a liaison who went far beyond the boundaries of his jurisdiction to conduct clandestine surveillance against Alexandra Ramajam, were seen in Washington as a direct affront to national sovereignty. By monitoring a private citizen taking photos of residences and trying to circumvent due process, the Brazilian apparatus acted with methods that the United States Department of State now, behind the scenes, compares to the tactics of the illegal police stations of the Chinese Communist Party. The backbone of Brasília's official narrative snapped the moment the facts crossed the Atlantic. What the public is witnessing now is the anatomy of a diplomatic defeat that the system tried to camouflage, but reality steamrolled it without mercy. Brazil's mainstream media, acting as a propaganda arm of the system, tried to push the version that the officer left the country voluntarily or that his mission had come to a natural end. Strategic analysis, however, shows that this is the first major institutional fake news to contain damage. The reality at Icuru is that Marcelo Ivo was expelled. And Lula confirmed this in this video.
Andre, congratulations on your stance regarding the American delegate by insisting on reciprocity. In other words, what they did to us, we will do to them, hoping that they are willing to resume talks and things can return to normal. Congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. President. Yep.
Andre, you're in high demand. You can.
The Director General of the Federal Police denies it happened this way in this video.
There is no expulsion of any Brazilian employee from abroad. Why did he leave there? Why did he come back? He came back by my decision because of this incident. So that we can clarify whether there is actually a formal process in the State Department, in ICE itself, or in Homeland Security. Wherever it may be, so that we can understand this process and then take administrative measures regarding this employee. What actually happened is that our colleague was called to the unit where he works. In fact, he went there to work, just like he does every day. I repeat, this colleague didn't just get there now. He's been there for 2.5 years. He's a very well-prepared colleague of the highest caliber. The results that I mentioned here, some numbers, are there to prove it. And when he arrived at work, his system access credential was denied. And therefore, I understood that it would be more prudent to send him back to Brazil. He remains accredited with the American agency. There in the United States, his mission remains in effect, but he is here on assignment in Brazil so that we can understand this process, including through formal channels. And also, on our side, Merval, just to add, we also have an American immigration agent here at the Federal Police Headquarters in Brasília, and who also plays a very important role in cooperation, both for us and for the United States, and I am sure that the cooperation will continue. But in the same way, I ordered that this officer's credentials be revoked here at the Federal Police until we can fully clarify the situation.
So, my friends, he had his diplomatic visa revoked while he was still on American soil, which turned him into someone out of status in a matter of minutes. In the real game of geopolitics, being expelled for violating visa terms is a mark of disgrace. The moment the visa was revoked, the federal police official came onto ICE's radar, the immigration service, and the irony is brutal. The same agent who tried to mislead the American police into arresting an opponent found himself at imminent risk of being detained and deported. The federal police, in a desperate attempt to save face, issued statements talking about international cooperation against organized crime. But the facts contradict every word. There was no cooperation. There was an attempt to manipulate the American immigration system to extend internal political persecutions beyond Brazilian borders. Marcelo Ivo tried to create a legal shortcut, ignoring Brazilian authority, the State Department, and figures like Marco Rubio. The Brazilian system believed it could export its model of opaque political investigations to Washington, but it ran up against an administration that refuses to be used as an armed wing for ideological revenge. The farce of the voluntary departure collapsed the moment the State Department decided that the truth was the only possible response to Brasília's insolence. What this means in practice is that Brazil lost its main intelligence link with the United States because of a clandestine espionage operation against opponents. The escalation of tension reached its peak when the U.S. State Department, through its representative for the Western Hemisphere, decided to call it what it is. They didn't just expel the police official, they labeled the Brazilian action with a term that is a diplomatic death sentence: witch hunt. Put simply, what Washington is telling the world is that the proceedings conducted in Brazil against opponents do not have international legal legitimacy. By using the term witch hunt, the United States stamped the Brazilian inquiry as official political persecution. This invalidates any future extradition attempts and puts Brazil in the same category as regimes that use the police to silence dissent. China, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, just look at who Brazil is sitting next to. This is the result of President Lula's disastrous policy. The reality is that Ramajam's asylum request now carries enormous weight. They have proven to a democratic power that there is political persecution in Brazil by the federal government and by the judiciary, namely Brazil's Supreme Court. The American recognition that there is ongoing persecution pulls the rug out from under any decision that comes from Brazil's Supreme Court regarding Brazilian citizens. And then, Brasilia went into shock because it realized that its jurisdiction ends where the sovereignty of a power that still respects due process of law begins. The federal police's attempt to celebrate a brief detention as if it were a trophy of efficiency was the fatal mistake that awakened the giant. They went to the media, to television, to the newspapers. Even Lula himself celebrated, saying they were bringing Ramagam back to Brazil. And the lie was decoded, it was exposed, showing how they manipulate, how they blatantly lie to Brazilians. First, they shamelessly lied that they were cooperating with the American government. Then they were found out the officer was expelled, and they lie saying he wasn't expelled. Meanwhile, the United States shows the document and says he was expelled for spying. The Brazilian system thought it could deceive, fool American intelligence with social media narratives. But they found out that for the Trump administration, the law is not a suggestion, it's a non-negotiable limit. The demoralization is complete and Brazil's international isolation is starting to come into sharp focus. Look at the aircraft carriers arriving. At any moment we'll have news about this. What the map reveals is that Washington is not just protecting the individual, it's protecting its legal system from contamination. Even Lula ordered retaliation. What do you think? Do you think any Brazilian retaliation scares Donald Trump? And then came the UOL News Portal, a media outlet historically aligned with the establishment which was forced to admit it. And it reveals the extent of the institutional breakdown. The supposed cooperation between the federal police and the Americans was a complete fabrication. ICE released Ramajam without even notifying the Brazilian authorities. The federal police only found out about the release through social media, which shows that Washington cut off the trusted channels. The chemistry that Lula's government tried to sell after last year's meeting with Trump is dead and buried. What exists now is the accelerated deterioration of relations, driven by the fact that the Brazilian system is trying to destroy Bolsonarism through methods that Washington considers illegal. And there's one more factor that keeps the Alvorada Palace up at night: the rapid rise of Flávio Bolsonaro in the election polls. The political map shows that Bolsonarism is a living and competitive force, and Washington has realized that the system is trying to clear the board through brute police force. The expulsion of Marcelo Ivo was also a direct retaliation for the fact that Lula's government blocked the visa of a Trump official earlier this year. Trump's message is clear: for every aggression from Brasilia, there will be a disproportionate response from Washington. Brazil is being pushed into diplomatic isolation while the system desperately tries to maintain the narrative that it still has control over the country's international image. The reality on the ground is that the Brazilian government has lost communication with the world's greatest power and now operates in a credibility vacuum. What the map shows us is that Washington has already started treating the Brazilian government not as an ally, unfortunately, but as an ideological adversary that needs to be contained. And it's along these lines that Brazil ends up being closer to Venezuela and Iran than to the true allies of the world's greatest democracy. The outcome of this episode is a strategic checkmate. The attempt to turn the United States into an arm of Brazilian political persecution was a mistake that brought down the farce. Marcelo Evo returns to Brazil as a symbol of an institution that was used for ideological purposes and ended up humiliated by real sovereignty. The majority...
Pergunta que o mapa dos acontecimentos deixa no ar é: quem será o próximo?
If a liaison officer was expelled for carrying out orders that violated international treaties, the masterminds behind those orders in Brasilia know that the noose is tightening. The world is no longer looking at Brazil as a vibrant democracy, but as a laboratory of authoritarianism that tries to export its methods abroad. Yes, when we say that Lula adopted the strategy of the Chinese Communist Party, that's it. Now, decoding this scenario doesn't end here, but even on rented ground, the truth always finds shelter. The complete map of what is really happening in the world, far from algorithms and censorship from Sandoz decrees, is being drawn right now inside our intelligence bunker. Yes, my friends, we already have more than 3,000 subscribers funding the information that shields the mind and ensures that we keep operating with total independence, bringing much more complex analyses of the geopolitical chessboard. Access is in the first pinned comment, in the QR code that appears on your screen, and in the video description, so go check it out right now. And if you're looking to protect your family's perception against the ideological mud that has taken over entertainment, our movie and series channel delivers real culture without woke culture, with tips that truly strengthen family values. The link is right below and here on the card. Now I want to ask you, who stayed until the end? What do you like most about our channel? Comment now, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video to strengthen our information sovereignty. The witch hunt label from the State Department is a stain that can't be removed with an official statement. The truth steamrolls lies with the force of gravity. Now, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.